On today's episode of Ray's Sports Rant, I look at the obsession with the Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick argument. Let's get serious and start remembering everything that Belichick and Brady did before the split. Major League Baseball has lost Fernando Tatis Jr. for 80 games for violating MLB's PED policy. It's time for professional sports to start allowing steroids back in the game. I vowed to never cover the NFL again if Deshaun Watson wasn't suspended for at least an entire season. I may have changed my mind. And Stanley Cup champion Nazem Kadri signed a deal with the Calgary Flames. How did Kadri shake up the Flames lineup? You know, the NFL had the chance to do the right thing. I believe that the NFL was going to be on the right side of history for the first time ever. Unfortunately, the NFL did what the NFL does. The impact that they've had on Toronto FC, it's undeniable. I understand that you have to defend your quarterback. I understand that you just can't come out and, say, well, we don't want Deshaun anyways. I understand. I get it. I have to do this because I have to appreciate it. And welcome to Ray's Sports Rant here for the Dean Blundell Network at deanblundell.com. You can also find all my work over at rayroute.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, August the 19th, and by now y'all know it's my birthday. So for my 36th birthday, I get to hang with all of y'all and talk about everybody's favorite pastime, well, at least my favorite pastime. We get to talk sports. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at DPN_Ray. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into it, shall we? So I was a little surprised that Nazem Kadri didn't have a team until now, mainly because I didn't know that Nazem Kadri was a free agent. As people know, I am not a hockey puck, but when you cover sports, you got to know a little bit of something. And I know a little bit of somebody who's going to come in here and talk about the Nazem Kadri deal to the Calgary Flames, mainly because I can't, but I know that hockey fans, they care about it. So Nazem Kadri signed a deal with the Calgary Flames. I think it's worth like $7 million a season. He played for the Colorado Avalanche last year, won a Stanley Cup with them. Former Toronto Maple Leaf. I know he's got a bit of a reputation of being a bad boy in hockey. See, I pay attention a little bit. So when I saw that he signed, I was a little bit surprised. I thought he was still an Avalanche, to be honest with you. But number two, I was like, it's August. It's the end of August. Why is he just signing with a team right now? And I did bring in DeanBlundell.com blogger and podcaster Griff Bordajon for an interview who kind of answered all the Kadri questions for me. However, let's start here from a clip. It's an audio clip. Not video, audio clip from Flames TV asking Nazem Kadri why he signed with the Calgary Flames.
Signed a 7-year deal with the Flames. There were a few teams after you, some interest in you. You had a few choices. Why did you pick Calgary, and how excited are you to join the Flames?
I couldn't be more excited, really. I love the city of Calgary. I've been, visiting there for years. Obviously like the, direction of the team and, the moves, we've made thus far. And I think it's been a great rebound, and always appreciated the Calgary Flames fan base. So, all those played a key contributor into me making my decision.
So like I said at the beginning, there's nothing I can contribute to this conversation outside of I know Nazem Kadri signed with the Flames. So before this massive rainstorm behind me started, I know you can't see it, it was a beautiful sunny day, and I interviewed my boy Griff from the Dean Blundell Network, and he came in and he talked about this Nazem Kadri deal and kind of answered all the questions I had. Fun fact, it has rained on my birthday the last 18 out of the last 20 years. But here's what Griff had to say about Nazem Kadri. Hi, Griff. Thanks so much for joining me here today.
Ray, it's always a pleasure to join in, and happy birthday to yourself, too.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Griff, the Calgary Flames signed unrestricted free agent Nazem Kadri to a 7-year contract carrying a $7 million average annual value, the team announced Thursday. How is Kadri going to help the Calgary Flames?
Look, the Calgary Flames were in a very sticky situation because free agency about a month ago, lose Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk wants out because he wants to go back to the States. And then all of a sudden, Brad Treliving comes in, Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, now Nazem Kadri. He basically became the real life version of that meme where it's the call an ambulance guy, but not for me. But what this signing does do is solidify that the Calgary Flames are back in that Stanley Cup conversation. Now I know they had a brutal exit in the Battle of Alberta in the playoffs to the Edmonton Oilers. But when you compare the two teams of what they have done each this offseason, Edmonton, sure, they brought in Jack Campbell. They brought in a couple of extra pieces, mainly former Leafs. But Calgary is basically looking like, okay, we lost, but we're upgrading at the same time. You're basically just replacing complementary pieces, and now, too, they got better defensively. My biggest question mark for them is still in goalie because Jacob Markstrom did struggle down the line, even though he was a Vezina candidate. But at the end of the day, with Nazem Kadri, look, he's going to be the exact same player as he was in Colorado. It's just the biggest question mark is, was his season last year a one-year wonder career year, or is he going to carry that same energy over to Calgary? Because Calgary is a franchise where, look, it's a Canadian franchise, good market, and you want to know, are they a cup contender? And if I had to say right now, I'd say put my money on yes, they are.
Calgary is also trading longtime center Sean Monahan and a conditional first-round pick in 2025 to the Montreal Canadiens for future considerations to accommodate Kadri's deal. What is Montreal gaining in Monahan, and what effect will this move have on the Flames?
See, with the Monahan trade, it's more or less a high-risk, high-reward for Montreal. I only look at that because, look, he's a guy, he's been hurt the last few years, hasn't been putting up stellar numbers, was a former first-round pick of the Calgary Flames, good Brampton boy, actually, from the GTA. Played his junior actually in Ottawa. But with Sean Monahan, it's more about him looking to resurge himself and maybe become, even though he is only late 20s, can be a leader on a Montreal team right now that, look, we got the news last night with Carey Price, probably not going to be playing this year, and Shea Weber's obviously on his way out. Montreal kind of needs that older voice in the locker room, and I think Sean can bring that. So I think if you're a Canadiens fan in the situation, don't expect him to score. Just hope he can stay healthy and produce at the same time, but I wouldn't look at anything spectacular when it comes to him. Meanwhile, with Calgary, it's more addition by subtraction because I don't think it's totally going to be a missed player. It's kind of like when a player leaves your team and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like, thank you for your service, but at the same time, too, they're not going to be totally sad to see him go in the Flames Nation.
Kadri was the top player remaining on the open market. He posted 87 points in 71 games last season with the Colorado Avalanche, and he played a significant role in helping the club capture the Stanley Cup. Why did it take Kadri so long to find a team this offseason?
I think he was just looking for the right price. A lot of these guys, after when they have good seasons like that, they kind of get greedy in the sense of they want the deal that's for them. That's why you saw John Klingberg a few weeks ago sign in Anaheim for a one-year deal. That's why you saw Taylor Hall a couple seasons ago sign in Buffalo and then eventually got dealt to Boston. These guys are just kind of waiting for the right time and the right opportunity. But at the same time, too, it's up to teams to clear cap room to get them as well because they know, hey, look, we got Nas off the books. We've got in Colorado, because obviously he wasn't going back there just because their cap situation is what it is. But with Calgary, I think also, too, once they got rid of Tkachuk, you did extend Huberdeau, but that doesn't start until next season. Meanwhile, Uyghur's still this year making about $5.5 million, which is a really good deal for a defenseman, one of the more underrated D-men in the league. But, yeah, going back to the original question, why did it take so long for Kadri? It's like I said, probably a little bit of waiting for the right time, but also, too, even if it's time, it's always about the money because at the end of the day, these guys want to go to a place where, A, they know they're going to win. That's the other thing with Nazem Kadri, too. I don't think he would have signed with like an Anaheim or a Seattle. He wanted to sign with a team where he probably looks at them and go, hey, they're going to be in the cup window because he just won another cup and he's going to want another one, too.
Thanks so much, Griff, for joining the Race Sports Rant. Take a second and tell the people where they can find you.
You know what, guys? I am new to the Dean Blundell Network, but if you want to find me anywhere on social media, it's at Mr. Griffin B on Twitter, at Mr. Griff B on Instagram, and on TikTok, Griff Sports Talk. I'll be bringing in the articles. I'll be bringing in all the content to you guys coming soon. And anytime I get to talk hockey, it's always a good day, especially on a Friday.
All right. Thanks so much, Griff.
No problem. You have a good day, Ray.
Yeah, so I really appreciate Griff coming on, having a chat with me, teaching me a little bit about the ice game. I actually found what he had to say interesting. Obviously, I mean, in professional sports, everything comes down to money, but yeah, no. So you'll see Griff on here probably quite a bit anytime I have to talk about hockey. Anyways, here's a little bit of a fan reaction to Kadri signing with Calgary. Jim says, welcome to Calgary, Naz. So excited to watch you in red. Congrats on the contract. Well deserved. Bill says, it's not too soon to call him Naz. Hashtag Flames family. Diane says, love that he's already saying we already a flame. And Pokey says, the silver lining is he won't be targeting our players for career-ending injuries. like I said, I understand that Nazem Kadri's got a bit of a reputation around the NFL, but it is what it is. So I want to move on a little bit here, and I want to talk about the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady rivalry. Why do I want to talk about it? Well, because people keep bringing it up even when it doesn't matter. I'm so sick of hearing about Bill Belichick versus Tom Brady. How about it was the greatest quarterback coach duo in the history of the NFL, and we just leave it at that? Why do we have to keep having these ridiculous conversations? You want to know why? Because mainstream media tries to keep everything as relevant as possible. And I'm going to play an audio clip from Stephen A. Smith on ESPN and what he had to say about Bill Belichick this morning.
What we have to say about Bill Belichick is, bro, every year that you're without Tom Brady, you look worse.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to keep him there. We heard the news about Tom Brady wanting to leave because Bill Belichick wasn't that receptive to keeping him. Getting Jimmy Garoppolo, drafting him with a second-round pick. Jimmy Garoppolo was supposed to be the heir apparent. Robert Kraft had to step in for you to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. All of this stuff going on to keep Tom Brady. All of this stuff was going on. So the belief is Tom Brady was forced out.
Yeah.
And Robert Kraft told me personally, I'm quoting here, if there was a way, if Tom Brady had said, I want to stay, he'd be here.
Yeah.
But we all know that Bill Belichick wouldn't, quote, unquote, kiss the ring per se.
Right.
And that's why Tom Brady said it's time for me to move on. That is attached to Bill Belichick. And so when we look at him and we see the struggles, we see what cover Tom Brady provided. And the fact that you essentially pushed your cover out the door, that's where the legacy gets a bit of a stain on it because, damn, the brother been gone for 3 years, 3 years. What's up?
Okay, so this is going to be the third year that Tom Brady's been gone. This is going to be the third season that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have been separated. And the only person who continues to stain his legacy is Stephen A. Smith, who has to come up with these fake hot takes only so he can prove a point to people that make absolutely no sense. It's garbage. It's stupid. Everybody who knows football knows it's stupid. What happened? Year one that Brady was gone, Brady went and won the Super Bowl. Bill Belichick had half a team, a mismanaged roster because of things around Brady, signs Cam Newton, it goes terrible. They go 7-10, 7-10. They probably should have gone 1-15 that season. They go 7-10. The next season, they make the playoffs. So what the are you talking about, Stephen A. Smith? Shut the fuck up with just this ridiculous narrative. Here's the response by some of the fans today. Jerry Thornton from Barstool says, every year, the one with Cam Newton and all the opt-outs, followed by the one where he made the playoffs and won Executive of the Year. Kayla says, terrible take, best coach ever. It's been 2 seasons since Brady left. They were already back in the playoffs in their second year without him. BB's legacy is cemented in already. It's a scientific miracle that he can even hold either of his hands up with all of those rings. James says he spent all his draft capital keeping this team afloat when Brady was there, and now he has to rebuild without much draft capital stored up and an oldish team, and that takes some time. Nothing unusual, really. And Madmen Sports says, almost half the conference makes the playoffs. Did it look like they even remotely belonged in the playoffs? Then he turned around and let the team get even worse. Joint practices versus the Panthers just symbolized 2 teams fighting for the first pick. Gotta be a troll because that was just as dumb a take. Anyways, let's get off the stupidity. Let's move on to something else. And I want to talk a little bit about Fernando Tatis, who had been suspended for 80 games. Now, initially, I had come on here because I had read an article that his teammate Profer had defended him. And then I started doing a little bit of digging. And, oh, man, I mean, there's a lot of negative things out there said about Tatis. What I will say is I believe that baseball was better than steroids, and professional sports leagues need to reevaluate their policies. listen, I think that if you have a substance like steroids that can help people heal, as a pain fan, when I spend money I don't have to go watch a game, I want to see the best product available. That means having the best players on the field. And that means the owners, the commissioner, the coaches all expect their top players to be constantly playing. Well, guess what? Professional athletes' bodies break down no matter what the sport, whether it's baseball, hockey, football, basketball, soccer, badminton. Bodies break down when you're doing physical activity. So I believe that they should allow athletes to use steroids for recovery purposes administered by a doctor. Fully acknowledge that there will be people in the league who take advantage of a lax policy, but I don't think that should a few bad apples. I don't believe a few bad apples should deter the league from maybe allowing some responsible use of steroids. However, though, let's get back to this Tatis, because the whole narrative has changed from what I originally wanted to talk about. Here's Melvin, his coach, talking about the Tatis suspension.
Yeah, it was right before the game. We had AJ came in and told me after batting practice, we met with the players real quick, and they went out and had to play a baseball game. So obviously it's disappointing. I haven't talked to Todd yet. I've seen the statement, so it's tough for me to get into detail. But, this is a blow for us, and we'll have to move on. I'm glad we made the moves we did over at the deadline. We feel like we have a really good team still, and, sometimes you have to deal with some adversity as a team. It stunned everybody, but, it was better than finding out during the game and then having that go out through the dugout. So, AJ made the right call, even though we found out late, to talk to the team right before we went on the field. Look at our lineup. We still have a really good lineup. So I think that's what we have to take going forward is, we liked our team before. We were waiting for Toddy, and we felt like we had a really good team coming out of spring. And then we made 4 really big moves that enhanced our roster and our club, and so we're comfortable with the team we have.
So that doesn't sound like a coach who's very concerned about his team moving forward. Now, San Diego is holding on to that final wild card spot with the Brewers 1 game behind them, Philly 1 game ahead of them for that second spot. I don't think anybody's catching up to the top. So, but he seems okay with it. He seems like he's happy with this team. They got Soto. Things can be okay. However, Mark DeRosa absolutely tore not just Tatis, but also the Padres apart, mainly for his contract and some irresponsibility in his mind. Here's what Mark DeRosa had to say.
I have so many things. First off, 22 years old. Let's put that in perspective. 23 years old now. 22 years old after last year's 42 homer season. Okay, when I was 22, 23 years old, I was in high A ball, okay? I'm not the face of a franchise. I think there was this rush, and I don't understand why. I'm gonna be all over the place here. Yeah. Don't understand why after 2 years, there was this mad dash to give him $340 million, okay? There were still 4 more years to watch him play baseball. And if he was a $500 million player like Juan Soto, then he would have deserved it come that time. It's not like they got a discount. It's not like the Atlanta Braves got Ronald Acuna for $100 million and you're like, we have to do this. They basically handed the keys to the castle to him. Then he gets in a motorcycle thing. I'm not saying you have to void the entire contract, but we're going to pay him through that? Aaron Boone lost his job. A-Rod came in to play for the Yankees. Yeah. That's like known through the history of the game. There's certain things you can't do in the offseason and get hurt. Jeff Kent, there's a bunch of players that come to mind. Yeah. Stuff like that. So they haven't had him all year. I agree with Bob Melvin. They haven't had him all year, so why worry about it now? But it just seems like this is a pattern of immaturity. Last year in the dugout at St. Louis with Manny, going after Bobby Dickerson. At some point, you have to respect the game and respect your teammates. Right. At some point. But I also think some of the blame lies on the Padres because they empowered such a young kid.
Those are some powerful words by DeRosa. I mean, basically coming out and saying he needs to respect the game. And I remember it was Tatis who hit a home run on a 3-0 count when the Padres were up big and his manager blasted him. And I mean, I defended him on that because I believe that baseball takes itself too serious. Ask Goose Gossage. Brilliant. One of my favorite interviews of all time is Dean Blundell just ripping apart Goose Gossage. However, though, I mean, but let's look what the fans have to say. about the whole suspension piece. Jeremy says, looks like Cano did have some influence on the Padres after all. Ooh, cold. RD says, Rob Parker and Chris Broussard said that they'll take the trio of Manny Soto and Tatis because of the swag. Add some roids into the mix. Seeswar says, this is not a joke. This is not a joke? Come on, MLB. You profited off steroids for ages. Now an injured player who was probably given some medication as part of his rehab is suspended. And Rational says, maybe the Padres knew this was coming and went balls to the wall during the trade deadline. 4D chess. And the final story we're going to talk about today is the Deshaun Watson story, because God knows I haven't talked about it enough. I've been covering the Deshaun Watson story since last March. It's been one of the leading stories that I've been working on, and it's all finally coming to a conclusion. Yesterday, I was very upset about the Deshaun Watson situation, to the point that I messaged Dean Blundell himself and said, I will not cover the NFL anymore. Poor people have morals, people. I've also settled down. I'm not as upset anymore, and I will be covering football. Now, if you believe that what I was said yesterday, if you believe any of that was manufactured, I want to share a clip with you that was supposed to go up on the website yesterday afternoon that never made it there because I decided to wait a minute, and it never made it, but I want to share it with you now. I want you to see how upset I was yesterday. What's going on, guys? This is Ray Route coming to you for RayRoute.com and the Dean Blundell Network at DeanBlundell.com. I hate doing these car videos, but I couldn't wait till I got home for this. I had to have this discussion. This March, when there was enough evidence presented that Deshaun Watson had definitely acted in an inappropriate, predatory way, I made a statement that said, if Deshaun Watson is not suspended for at least an entire season, that I would cease from covering the NFL for my YouTube page, for DeanBlundell.com, for Newsbreak, or any other app or publication that I currently have a contract with. Today, the NFL struck a deal with the NFLPA, and Deshaun Watson will be suspended for 11 games. And guess what? Deshaun Watson will be back to play his former team, the Houston Texans. That will be Deshaun Watson's return to football. In my opinion, the NFL and the NFLPA today made a statement to people everywhere that they condone sexual violence and predatory sexual behavior towards women. Now, I am on this network. I am who I am and make the money that I make because of the National Football League. But I promise you, this will be the last time I ever talk about the NFL in this capacity ever again. I've already informed Dean. I've already informed my bosses elsewhere that I refuse to cover the NFL. Fuck Roger Goodell. Fuck the NFLPA. Fuck Deshaun Watson. And fuck every motherfucker in Cleveland who's defending his predatory ass right now. I'm done. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I believe in the 24-hour rule, because 24 hours later, you probably feel a little bit different than you did the day before. Again, I'm still not happy about the Deshaun Watson suspension. I'm still pissed about it, but I'm not ready to quit everything I've worked my ass off to do because of it. And I don't hate everybody in Cleveland either. However, I did get a chance to express myself this morning in a little bit of a calmer fashion. I thank you to Lachlan Cross, who invited me to do a hit on the locker room at 95.7 Cruise FM out in Edmonton. It was about an 8 to 10 minute interview I did with them. I'm going to play about 3 minutes and 40 seconds of it just so you can hear, again, my more rational thoughts, because even even my show last night of Ray Sports Rants wasn't good. Here's the part of the interview that I did with the locker room this morning.
Oh, that's so awful.
The NFL and the NFLPA have a deal that they are when investigations like this happen and it has to go to punishment, they go to an independent arbitrator. The independent arbitrator gave Deshaun Watson 6 games, which I think everybody on the planet thought was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, and then Lachlan, you and I talked about this, and I said, I'm hoping the NFL does the right thing and appeals, which they did. And then for the last, 3-4 days, everything I had been hearing was it's a slam dunk, full season, $5 to $7 million suspension, and I was okay with that. I believe in people getting second chances, but a full season was my minimum. And then on Wednesday, I started hearing rumblings around that the NFL was talking anywhere between 10 to 11 games, and I was praying that the people I was talking to were wrong. And then yesterday, it was announced that the NFL and the NFLPA had come to an agreement, and Deshaun Watson will be suspended for 11 games and fined $5 million.
So there is a cash fine that goes with this as well. It's gross, right?
It's disgusting. I wrote a piece when they appealed it and said for the first time ever, Deshaun Watson was coming out, or the NFL, I apologize, was coming out on the right side of history. That's what I was the most excited about. They're finally coming out on the right side of history. They've always handled these situations so poorly. And then the NFL did what the NFL does, and they handled the situation poorly. There was no reason that this should have been less than one season. It was a slam dunk case. I always compare it to Calvin Ridley, who was suspended indefinitely this year. Last season, Calvin Ridley for the Atlanta Falcons was at home, not playing, not a part of team activities, and made a bet that the Atlanta Falcons were going to win their game. So no inside information, nothing like that. Bet on his team to win. He's suspended indefinitely. I was suspended on Twitter yesterday for making the statement, but I'll make it again. I believe the message that the NFL and the NFLPA, people are upset with the NFL, but you got to be just as mad at the Players Association. They sent a strong message yesterday that they condone sexual violence and sexual harassment towards women with this suspension.
And Twitter pulled you down?
Yes, I appealed it and won, but yep, I was down for 3 hours yesterday for that comment.
Wow, that says a lot, because the NFL came after you, eh?
Yeah, one of them did. One of them reported me and came after me. I was not happy.
Well, good for you for standing up. The thing that bothers me about this is it kind of makes me want to not watch football this year. I kind of love watching football.
I'm in the same boat as you guys. I irrationally messaged my boss over on the Dean Blundell network yesterday and said I'm not covering the NFL anymore, and I'll find you football guys. But woke up this morning and remembered that poor people have morals, so I might be flipping on that. But no, I agree with you. I'm having a difficult time too supporting this league, because it's just one thing after another with them, and with this case, Deshaun Watson's first game back, coincidentally, is against his former team, the Houston Texans, the team that he forced a trade out of. Tell me.
I didn't know that. That's awful. They're cashing in on the negative publicity of it, right?
Yeah, I guess it's that old adage, right? Any press is good press.
Yeah.
And in the NFL, and I think the thing is, and we've had this discussion before, Roger Goodell and the NFL believe they're bulletproof, where every other sports league in the world right now would be squirming at the podium. If this was the NHL, Gary Bettman would be making comments. We haven't even heard from Roger Goodell.
So that was my hit on 95.7 Cruise FM this morning on the locker room. Thank you to Lachlan for having me on and giving me that opportunity to discuss Deshaun Watson with his audience. So yeah, now it is. It's done. It's over. It's finished. There's nothing much more I can say about it. I'm not happy. A lot of people aren't. Here's what the fans had to say about it. One person said, this was PFT Commander from PFT says, Deshaun Watson reduced to suspension due to 11 games after promising. Can I start over again? PFT Commander says Deshaun Watson suspension reduced to 11 games after promising not to sexually assault 24 women ever again. Schulzer says Deshaun Watson is being suspended for 11 games and a $5 million settlement. He'll be returning against. Oh, come on. The NFL is doing this shit on purpose. Robert Griffin III said the NFL had the opportunity to show it had learned from its ugly history on standing up for women with this Deshaun Watson case, and it failed. 11 games and a $5 million fine doesn't fit what he's been accused of doing and found to have done by Judge Sue L. Robinson. Sickening. And then one person just says Deshaun Watson paying his $5 million fine. Guys, that's it for Ray's Sports Rant here for the Dean Blundell Network at deanblundell.com. It is Friday. So I will not be back. It's I think they call it packing it in, right? You pack it in on Friday. We're packing it in. We are done until Monday. Hope you all have a great, solid weekend. Until next time, never forget,